Suffering comes from the mind. Well, that's at least the way that I see it. The way that I respond to what happens to me creates my suffering. And I am a firm believer of that. But I will say, and I will admit, that some of the most painful things that have happened to me in my life have been done to me by others through a misunderstanding. And we misunderstand each other for a whole host of reasons. But I think it's interesting that all of us seem to think that we have the right way to do things, and only us know what that is. But that's untrue. It's untrue because none of us see what the reality of life truly is. Not one of us see it straight. Why is that? Well, we learned about this prism in last week's video. That prism distorts and changes the direction of light or understanding and develops these belief systems that limit our viewpoint. They don't expand. It doesn't expand our viewpoint, it limits it. And so that white light traveling through the prism doesn't change, but the way it's filtered does. To the point where each of us is so limited in our viewpoint that we can't even see, we don't know what we don't know. So what do we do about it? Well, that's what we're here to talk about. And I think a story would really drive that point home. There's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey has passed a few years back, but those principles, those 7 habits that he has in that book are timeless. He has one story in there that really struck me and has always stood with me, and that is the story of the subway. So Stephen gets on the subway late in the afternoon. He's had a really, really long day at work. He's got his briefcase between his legs and his papers next to him on the seat next to him. And he's just minding his own business. And then the door opens and a father comes through the door with 3 of his children. And the father sits down, head down, deep sigh, and his 3 children just start walking around the subway. And Stephen Covey's like, man, what the heck, dude? Like, what is going on with this guy? Why would he allow his kids to do that? I would never, ever allow my kids to do that on a subway. And so he tells himself, you know what? I'm going to just show some patience. I'm not going to get involved. And he reads his papers. He picks his papers up and he's reading through them. And then these kids are running around now, running through the subway car. They're jumping off of seats and this guy's doing nothing. And Stephen Covey's like looking at him, trying to get his attention, but he won't look at him. So he goes back to reading his papers and he's huffing and puffing and he's telling himself to show patience. And then finally one of the kids comes and knocks his papers out of his hands. And he's like, all right, that's it. And he gets up and he goes over to the guy and he says, listen, man, what is going on with your kids? And the guy looks up and he's like, oh, as if he was like coming to. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Their mother just died. Whew. That's true understanding forced upon you immediately. Stephen's whole demeanor changed, as would ours. But the kid's behavior hadn't changed. The father really didn't change anything. Nothing really on the outside changed at all. But when Stephen Covey's perspective changed, he could see it from the other person's viewpoint, and he immediately felt compassion. And what is he going to do? Tell the kids to stop running around? And that story drives home so many points. We all find ourselves in a daily battle that no one knows about, really, us personally. We struggle with things that most people could never comprehend. every day. Some days are worse than others. And somehow every one of us has forgotten that the person next to us is in the same freaking boat. Somehow all of us have forgotten that we're all struggling every day. We're all dealing with something that no one knows nothing about. And understanding others brings down walls immediately, our walls and theirs. When we're dealing with a difficult situation, being misunderstood can almost feel like you're fighting for air, like you can't breathe and you will do anything to get breath. And so sometimes someone may feel, as if they're coming across rude or angry when they all are doing is just trying to make sure they're understood. And we struggle with that. I do too. I struggle with understanding people. And it's because my prism is not letting me see the way they see it. Our two prisms are crossing so violently that we can't do it. And it's human nature. But the more that we can practice it, the more that we can practice stepping back and saying, hey, I don't see things clearly, the more we can understand others. And here's the one thing that most people think about. Well, if I understand someone, then I've got to what? Change my belief system? Excuse their behavior? No, that's not the case at all. Truly understanding someone doesn't mean any of those things. We can understand someone and not agree with what they're doing. It's a crazy concept, but it's real. And the other part is we're not seeking to understand someone so that we can change them. That's not the goal either. That's ineffective. We're simply trying to understand someone's point of view because we're asking for the same thing. And what you'll find is the more often you understand someone else, the easier it is for them to feel like they can understand you.